Ah, the 1960s, the decade when the world switched from black and white to colour and when London was the centre of the universe. And as people were laying down their mind, relaxing and floating downstream, guitar makers had to adopt a radical approach to design to keep up. With that in mind, I'm Mark from Guitar Nerds, and these are my top 5 weirdest guitars of the 1960s. Number 5. While England was unquestionably the home of pop in the mid to late 1960s, Italy was without doubt the home of cool. High fashion and art house cinema spread the Italian aesthetic worldwide, and Italian guitar design challenged the established norms set by the big American brands. One such designer was Antonio Wandre Bikini, the brains behind Wandre guitars. Founded in 1957, Wandre produced some of the most eye-catching guitars ever made, and by utilising non-traditional materials and techniques, the brand never produced a boring guitar. One such technique featured prominently on the finish of number 5 on our list, the Rock Oval. Actually appearing very late in the 1950s, the majority of rock ovals were produced in the 1960s and completely epitomised the aesthetic of the era. The highly sculpted body featured a large cutout section partly covered by a chunky plastic scratch plate, and many of the models produced had a smoke finish, achieved by burning a candle under the guitar before the final gloss finish was applied. While the Rock Oval never broke into the mainstream, it does feature in an iconic piece of rock and roll history, lusted after by Bob Dylan in the 1967 movie Don't Look Back. Number 4. With American guitars unaffordable to many shoppers in the 1960s, Japanese guitars became a key fixture of the guitar scene, and one of the prominent brands of the era was Greko. Owned by the Kanda Shokai Trading Company, the Greko brand first appeared in 1960, primarily making affordable guitars for the European and US market, before moving into Fender-style copies towards the end of the decade. And while there are lots of Greko models that could have ended up on this list, by far the weirdest is the 950. Produced from 1967 to 1969 in the Taisco factory, the 950 was a semi-acoustic guitar with Barney Kessel-esque pointy horns and more than a touch of Japanese flair. But the weirdest and most eye-catching feature was clearly the V-shaped Shrike pickups. Housing 2 coils in each pickup, the 950 offers a huge range of tones by allowing you to turn off each coil individually, and the available sounds are still impressive to this day. Number 3. The 1960s have come to be known as a decade of serious innovation. Not only did the first humans land on the moon, but the first video game was created, the basic computer language was invented, and ARPANET, the grandfather of what we now know as the internet, first began, and guitar manufacturers were taking notice. One of the most complicated instruments made around the time, the Vox V1 organ guitar, was released in 1966. The invention of lead designer Dick Denny, the V251 took a standard Vox Phantom guitar and added solid-state circuitry from the company's Continental organ. And while the results were often patchy, when you hear how the circuitry was implemented, you'll wonder how it ever worked at all. Now, I make no claim to understand this technology at all, so I'll let the geniuses of VoxShowroom.com explain it in all the gory details. The Vox guitar organ had 6 organ tone generator circuits built into a cavity in the guitar body, 1 generator for each of the strings. The contacts that trigger the organ circuits to play were found in the frets of the guitar. Each fret on the guitar neck had 6 electronic contacts, 1 under each string. The circuit to the organ tone generator was completed when any of the guitar strings which were grounded were depressed to touch the respective fret-mounted contact. The organ tone generators developed different pitches based on the number of ohms separating the organ tone generator input signal from ground. The higher the electrical resistance, the lower the tone. To facilitate the production of the correct organ pitch for each location on the neck, a series of 21 resistors interconnected the 21 fret contacts under each string, 1 resistor per fret. Depressing a string on the first or lowest fret will cause the signal to travel through all 21 resistors before triggering the organ tone generator. Hypothetically, if each resistor was 100 ohms, the total accumulated resistance from the first fret contact to the tone generator would be 2100 ohms. This high resistance would make the lowest tone. Depressing the same string on the 12th fret would require the signal to travel through only 9 resistors, or 900 ohms. This lower resistance would make a much higher tone. Got it? Good. Number 2. For the past few decades, Yamaha guitars have been known for their rock-solid build, great value for money, and excellent feature set. But they do tend to stick to 1 or 2 traditional designs that loosely follow the templates set by the big American brands. This was not so much the case in the 1960s. First appearing in 1966, the Yamaha SG7 Samurai is a weird beast indeed. A huge departure from the offset shape debuted by Fender earlier in the decade, the Samurai was designed in conjunction with Japanese surf music legend Takeshi Terauchi. The elongated horn and hockey stick headstock make the Samurai a guitar like no other. While the original 1960s models are super rare, the SG7 was reissued in the early 2000s as the SG V300 in a huge range of colours including black, canary yellow, metallic red and pearl green, and these reissued models are relatively easy to come by today. Number 1. Now we wouldn't normally put two guitars from one brand on one of these lists, but in this case we're willing to make an exception. Guitars with built-in amplifiers have been fairly prevalent throughout the years. From Pignose to Vox, loads of different brands have tried to offer players a way of getting amped up tones without lugging around a separate box. Silvertone even tried building one into the guitar case itself. But as I mentioned earlier in this video, Wandre were the kings of taking things one step further. The Wandre Bikini was released in 1961 as a response to players' demand for a more convenient solution to amplification. Allegedly inspired by seeing Brigitte Bardot in the film And God Created a Woman, designer Antonio Wandre Pioli created the bikini in two distinctly separate parts, joined together by metal struts. It's also worth mentioning that the attached amp is one of the earliest examples of transistor technology being used in an amplifier specifically designed for use with a guitar. The Bikini is a truly bizarre guitar that pushed the boundaries of both design and technology and still seems radical to this day. So there we have it, 5 groundbreaking instruments from the decade that turned the world on. But did we miss anything? Let me know in the comments below. Like what you saw, remember to like and subscribe to Guitar Nerds because we'll be covering the weirdest guitars of the 70s, 80s and 90s in the coming weeks. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.